Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Mindful Monday. If it's your first time here, we invite you to always put in the comments where you're coming from, if you have any questions, concerns, if you'd like to have a topic raised for future podcasts. Of course, we'd love to hear that as well. And if you're uncomfortable just putting it out in the public, you can always direct message me as well. If it is your first time joining us, you can also type in those comments the word mindful. And after the broadcast, whether you're watching live or recorded, I will put a link in where you can follow that through to get a free copy of our hypnosis audio about releasing limiting beliefs, as well as receiving our free PDF weekly cheat sheet, which kind of is the bullet points of what we cover in each of these. So today we're here to talk about how to quickly and easily detach from your thoughts to transform from stress and anxiety. So when we have a troublesome thought, what we tend to do is we tend to keep thinking that thought over and over again. Does it hurt? Does it hurt? Am I still anxious? Am I still anxious? And so it kind of like intensifies that, and we feel like we can't kind of stop. And so what happens is if you were to kind of imagine just walking out in the yard, if you have a yard, walking in a circle for as many times as you rethink that thought, because you keep repeating it in your own mind, and you keep going in a circle in your own yard, what would happen is there probably would be no grass underneath your feet for the number of times you rethought your thought and went through that path. So what that happens to do is it happens to reinforce these neural pathways. It makes them stronger in our own minds. And it's just part of what we do. There's nothing wrong with you. I do it myself. So we're here to talk about ways to kind of stop that thought process. All right. And so from this place of stress and or anxiety, what we'll sometimes do is we'll attempt to avoid what we fear from this, and that's called experiential avoidance. And we've had talks about this before, and that's only going to make things worse. Avoiding what we're having, this anxiety, this stress, this fear about, is going to intensify the anxiety. At first it feels really good, and then later on it kind of stacks up, and so that's not going to be useful for us. And the other thing that we can do is we can, from creating this negativity loop, it's going through the same neural pathway over and over again. What we're going to do now is we're going to have a heightened awareness. And so anytime something similar to this happens, we're going to put ourselves into fight or flight. We're going to stimulate that negativity bias. We're going to stimulate that fight or flight. And so now there's going to be a lot of other things that also cause us to have this stress or anxiety. So that's not fun either. And some of these things are very unnecessary. In fact, most of them are. They say fight or flight is that saber-toothed tiger. And I know there's a few out there on the roads these days, but there's not that many. And so Byron Katie, what she says is, quote unquote, the only time we suffer is when we believe a thought that argues with what is. When the mind is perfectly clear, what is what we want. And so a thought is just a thought, basically. It's harmless unless we actually believe in it. So it's not actually our thoughts, but our attachment to our thoughts that cause us stress, anxiety, discomfort, if you will. And so one of the things we have to say here is we cannot stop thinking. I've had many a thought that I was like, I'm going to stop thinking about this. Stop. I love that stop it from Newhart, but it doesn't work, right? Our minds naturally think. That's what they do. And so it can be difficult, although not impossible, to control our thoughts. That's going to take a lot more practice, and whether it be meditation or reframing, et cetera, But what we can do in any instant, is basically we can be empathetic, we can understand our thoughts, and that's going to be a lot more helpful and useful to us. All right. So Byron Katie's resources are going to be available, because this talk is based on that, and they're all free. Well, not all, but the ones that I'm talking about are, which is www.thework.com. Okay? So she talks more about if you were to have these feelings come up and you project or you kind of blame a person. I know Brene Brown talks about that a lot too. In my experience, folks who have been doing this work, we tend to, of course, if somebody cuts me off in traffic, I'm going to be like, oh, you, but I know it's really not them. It's that I didn't leave myself enough time or whatever. So I tend to take The Work by Katie Byron and put it more towards internal work, or, what's going on within me kind of thing, and or my clients. So this is kind of my translation, but just know that a lot of these resources are amazing that are available by her on www.thework.com. And so she asked us to ask ourselves the following questions. The first thing, of course, you're going to do before you ask any questions is to identify any thoughts that cause you a stress or an anxiety, and then you're going to want to write these down. We want to write these things down, not to go over them or to, to keep dwelling on them, but to kind of move ourselves forward. And so now the first question that you're going to ask yourself here is, in this situation, who or what part of yourself, is how I kind of take it, angers, confuses, saddens, gets scared, kind of gets upset, or disappoints you, or you disappoint yourself, that kind of thing. So kind of notice that first. And then number 2 is, in this situation, how do you want this to change? What do you want to do? What would you like to have happen? So that's kind of that miracle question. What would it be like, right? Number 3 is, in this situation, what advice, and this is my translation, of course, would your highest self, that highest part of you, that more spiritual or higher being of your part of you, what would it offer, whether it be to yourself or to someone else? What would that highest part of yourself, that more enlightened part of yourself, offer here? And then number 4, in order for you to be happy or to have more relief, happy is, a relative state as well, to have more relief in this situation, what needs to be said, to be felt, to be done? So just kind of notice that. And write this all down, of course. And now number 5 is, what do you think, and of course this is, in my opinion, from your highest self point of view, of that stressed out you, or that anxious you, or anybody else that is stressing or making you feel anxious? Okay? And now number 6 is going to be, what is the part of this situation that you don't ever want to experience again? Okay. Now, after you write all of this out, go back to the original situation, don't change situations, and ask yourself, number 1, is it true? And so this is going to be a yes or no, not a yes and or yes but. And then if it is, you'll move on to question number 2. And if it is a no, then you'll move on to question number 3. And this will all be in the PDF, by the way. Or you can look it up on thework.com. Question number 2 is, can you absolutely know that it is true? And this is going to be, once again, a yes or no kind of answer. Number 3 is, how do you react? What happens when you believe this thought? And number 4 is, who would you be without this thought? Amazing. All right, so use your answers to turn around any troublesome kind of thoughts. It's like a total reframe. So an example would be, I'm not going to go through the whole 6 question part, but the last final 4 is, say I had a situation where I found myself kind of thinking something like, oh my gosh, I can't handle this, I'm so stressed out. Number 1, is this true? Well, yes, I'm feeling pretty stressed out right now. Yet I've handled so many things in the past, so I'm not sure about it being I can't handle it now. And number 2 is, can you absolutely know it's true? So as I said, I can't know for certain that I won't be able to handle this. And really, what does that even mean, I can't handle this, Situations, they happen, and we're going to go through them, whether we believe we can handle them or not. So how I react is in my control. Number 3 is, how do you react? Well, I am reacting right now, currently, with stress and anxiety about something that's in the very near future that I cannot change. And my constant thinking about this causes me to feel worse and actually exhausted in my case. And so then the final question would be, so who would you be without this thought? And I answered myself, and these are questions that I kind of reframed from Katie, just to let you know. Without this thought, I'd be more present and positive. I'd be focused on what I can actually do and on the next step to resolve any situation. And I could remain positive and curious. And so you really want to dwell on those positive things. So I hope this has been useful to you, and I hope you have a great Mindful Monday. Thanks so much. See you soon.